So that's the best answer I got for you at this point, but it's really how that worked out. And our current zoning code does not allow for certain types of uses in the downtown on the canyon to continue if there's a change of use or change of ownership, and there's that sort of thing. But anyway, I think it's a useful conversation to have as
Yeah.
we're having this.
Yeah, totally agree. And you can see the green is the proposed trail extension along the rim here. And I'd like to move on to circulation and see if what kind of input you all have in terms of circulation for the downtown, what works, what doesn't, what can we improve upon, what's a radical new idea.
Well, could I just make one final comment on the Smiths area there?
Sure.
Because with COVID, it's impossible for me to do something like get a a Sunshine Act thing until the governor relaxes, the in-person stuff.
Yes.
But I'm 1,000,000% positive, because I was attending the council meetings where they approved this new Smiths, and part of the trade-off was we would pay for the utility infrastructure that they would need, and in return, the very empty bottom corner of the lot there next to where the trail and the access to the trail is, they were supposed to have built a family park.
Oh.
And I'm 1,000,000% positive that was in the original agreements and contracts, and of course that's never happened.
All right. Well, good information to know. I didn't know that either, Greg. So thank you. Any other ideas? And I'd like to hear from some people that I haven't heard too much from, like Lisa and Gerald. Any ideas on circulation? What works, what doesn't?
Somebody mentioned bicycles, and we really are not bicycle friendly. So that to me would be a priority.
Right. And so what does that look like? Does that mean putting a bike lane on Central? Does that mean putting a bike lane on Trinity, or connecting the Rim Trail?
Yes. Yeah, definitely bicycle lanes on either Trinity or Central, and then a way to get from north to south, and
Right.
parking.
Right.
There's no bike parking.
So if we had to, okay, and let's set aside the bike parking. We will be in our notes, because we're not going to try to figure out where to put the bike parking. But
Yes, thank you, Will.
if we had to do some north-south routes here, where do you see that being critical? We show the extension of the bike trail at 20th, and there'd be a signalized intersection there. So is that good enough?
Can we go back to looking a little further out on the map?
Sure. Absolutely.
Well, not just for the bikes, but for traffic in general, because everybody knows, I mean, I do it, most people probably do it, is cut through the Merrimack Center now between Central and Trinity, going to and from Smiths. I don't know what's going to end up working out, but maybe somebody can get with the people in the know about the developer that bought that land, and see about maybe whether or not they want cars to be able to go through there. I think that we definitely need some sort of like safe bike path.
Right. So maybe something, let's just put something in here for now. We don't have to get that exact about it.
Because it's just too big an area without having something accessible for the bikes between Central and Trinity there.
Right. Carrie, can you put a kind of dashed green line in here?
Sure.
So.
The
And-
dashed green line is the bike trail, so it goes across across
Yep.
20th,
Right.
and then along the rim here, and then it'll. Where else does it cross over?
Well,
Central again.
we're
Does it
making
loop?
up new things, so we're just showing a proposed link from the Central down to Trinity on the Merrimack property. So
Yeah, so if I may,
Yeah.
let's say Merrimack's developed from one project that we want that, and then Greg, tell me if I'm wrong, but we want that pedestrian and bicycle access through the property. And because right now there's really a pass through that the county acknowledges right now.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Unfortunately, at this point, it's definitely something that we'll have to negotiate with the developer. We can't, we can address having new codes and ordinances requiring pedestrian bike paths, between
Greg,
major
this is part
roads.
of the project. This is what we're doing.
Yeah,
you
but the
agree?
thing is, what I'm going to get to is that we can't really do anything about that with codes because of court decisions. I was also a paralegal in my past life here, and they've already decided that once a developer buys a property, the local government cannot change the codes or ordinances.
let's not get into Tigard versus
Yeah, let's not.
Oregon
Let's
now,
not.
Greg.
Yeah,
So,
good
But
idea.
yeah, we need some kind of pedestrian bike
Listen
path,
to
I
Will.
think, here.
This is Lauren. I've also had some conversations with some folks about actually creating a road through that property to connect Central to Trinity.
Sure.
Because what that would do is if there's more cars and more traffic going through there, it also brings more visibility to those businesses on the west side there.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, that should be an option. Absolutely. I
Yeah.
agree.
Can we let's move on to some development patterns, and I would suggest that let's stay on Merrimack and just brainstorm about what, if you were the developer, what would you put there? What makes sense from what we know and in terms of market realities? What makes sense for this if you could redevelop this area? Does it make sense to, and I know that this is a sensitive subject, does it make sense to demolish the existing Smiths or redevelop the existing Smiths? What do we do with the old hotel site here? And how do we deal with parking on the site?
So
Yes.
I'm happy to go here
Oh,
if
good.
that's okay.
Sure.
So my project for the last couple of years has been promoting this mid-sized performing arts venue. And I, in fact, have been in discussions with the developers of the Merrimack, the new developers, about placing a mid-sized performing arts center at the old Hilltop House location. That is a location that would be, it's a little to the east of where you just
Right,
dropped
right
that,
here.
right there. It would be a flagship for visitors coming into town. It would be the first thing they saw as they approached the downtown. And in my discussions with them, they're mostly interested in doing housing, probably upscale housing, but I think at least what they indicated to me is they saw a performing arts venue as an attractor or a magnet, a great place for people to co-locate to. So from my perspective, that would be an ideal location for placing something like that for our downtown. We need to have something like what was proposed 20 years ago to attract people to our downtown.
Great. That sounds great. And we don't have really a template for that, but Carrie, if you can put kind of a customized polygon there, that would be great, and shift it a little to the east, to the right.
I'd like to expand on that, Paul, if I could. before finding out the places had been sold, I kind of expanded on Peachy's idea. And I think the developers, if they're open to a performing arts center, they might be open to something of sort of a larger multi-purpose venue for that area that could, potentially be more profitable than just housing. I'd kind of envision that the first thing people would see after coming through the new roundabout is to have like a large family park of some sort right there where Hilltop House is. And of course, there's plenty of room for parking in the Merrimack Center, and then just a very short walk. And with the way COVID had done things, what's going on now on Friday nights in Central Park Square with the outdoor movie, and with a lot of towns in New Mexico as well as other states actually thinking about building their own drive-in movie theaters, would be to make some sort of park there where just like we have the Friday night concert series at the Pond, once things, get back to normal, where we can have something with like a large screen and have like when we were doing the Tuesday or Wednesday night movies at the Pond, only have it for a larger venue right there in like some sort of family park or something where people can bring chairs and
Great.
that
And maybe-
stuff, and then take the empty Smith's building that we have now, and it can probably for a reasonable cost be brought up to code to make that a performing arts center that could, also be used as a convention center or
Let
Well,
me stop you right
yeah.
there, Greg. We've already looked at that and it will not work.
Yeah, and and maybe let's keep the performing arts piece at the Hilltop House site, like you're talking about, Paul. I think
Yeah,
I think that kind of makes sense. And can we get some input from Lauren, from Rin, from Gerald, Lisa Joe, in terms of what about housing? Do you think housing is a
Yeah.
feasible option here?
This is Lisa Joe. That's exactly what I was going to say. That is what we need right now. Housing, 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 like especially for the Merrimack Center. What I see there is housing on the second and third level and commercial on the main level. I think that could be really exciting.
Can we put a mixed use footprint on there, Carrie, rather than the townhomes or whatever those are there, micro units?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is Lauren. I agree with what Lisa said. I think that's an ideal spot to enhance housing in the downtown area. Maybe even short-term housing for, Lanol workers and students and postdocs. I think having them downtown will only enhance activity at the businesses. And a lot of them, I think, want to be in the center of things. So I think that would be a great opportunity for mixed use.
Excellent.
If I can, well,
Sure.
some of the input that I get all the time, and I have various ways to respond to it, but I want to hear it from this group, is the fact that Lionel does need office space. They need it. And there's this interplay with other economic conditions in town. But I think what I'd like to hear from folks is just an acknowledgement about the impact of office from the lab, and also I think just that. I think it's just like a general question that I have in terms of how folks feel about that, and if they work there. I think how that would impact the general health of downtown, and then also this concept about Main Street in office floor stuff. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Well, if they need more office space, how come they never take advantage of any of the empty spaces that sit there for months, a year or two?
This is
So
Lisa Joe. May I comment
yeah,
on that?
I'm asking this just from a general perspective and um, just a feedback perspective question. Not that we have any answers to the questions that may arise,
Yes.
and that's really it. So, thank you.
May I comment?
Sure.
Yes, Lanel needs housing, and right now with people, we have 1,900 people working from home as a year program. The need for housing, need for office is just a little bit less, but we are working on a couple of leases in town, but we can't do like little tiny onesie twosies. We need a big amount of space. We're also looking at renting in Santa Fe or purchasing in Santa Fe. So it could possibly be like a little hub for the people who are working at home in Santa Fe area. The other thing that's in play here is that the government really doesn't want us to be renting.
Mhm.
So if we're going to rent, we also have to give them the plan how we're going to get out of there. So it's not a permanent thing. And we have a lot of land on our property. That's Lanel. So why don't we build there?
Right.
That's
And I would
their
second
argument.
that. I do not understand why the lab that owns like 37 square miles across the canyon needs to rent space from our downtown. From what I've heard anecdotally, I'm not a business person, so I'm not sure, but what I've heard anecdotally is that when the lab rents in our downtown, it raises the rates for our small business people. And
Yes
so
and no.
our small business people feel like they're competing against something they can't compete against.
So if I may, well, just and
Yeah.
I see Greg nodding his head, and I appreciate that, and thank you, Lisa Joe and Paul, for about this input. It's mostly to do. My question really had more to do with about a use downtown, like activity use within the zoning categories, and we know, and I know that we know there's an economic dynamic that goes on with some of that, but um, it's it's just a question that I wanted to ask because as we move forward in our downtown plan, we acknowledge the fact that the laboratory really does need million plus square foot, as they say. So what are we doing? What is Los Alamos downtown doing in their plans accordingly? So it was very simply that. So thank you for your.
Hey, so we have to hurry up a little bit. In about 15 minutes, we have to start reporting back.
Oh, we are
so
behind. We
you
are behind.
are a little bit behind. So I think for now, those are like issues that we can probably not solve.
Yeah.
We're trying to like identify areas for these uses for like either residential or mixed use or a plaza or micro commercial. So if you have any ideas of where you would place those new uses, now's the time.
Yeah. So can we look at, are we kind of done? Is this it for Merrimack for now? We have a public performing venue and we have a mixed use concept here. Are we, do you want to leave the rest of this existing infrastructure and buildings here? Are you, do you think it's worth putting more into this site, or would you rather look at other sites like Park Square or south of Trinity in our remaining time?
This is Lisa Joe again.
Sure.
I would like to see south of the pond. I know that directly where the hand is right now, that somebody has purchased that for development. But just to the east of there, I think that's county land. And I know the
20th Street.
Marriott was planned and the convention center, but there's also some other areas there that could
Right.
perhaps get something useful.
And
Maybe-
Lisa, do you mean like residential? You mean like some, when you say useful, are you thinking some residential or some commercial spaces?
Commercial there. I think it's too small to get much housing in there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so maybe it's some micro retail or
Right. There was a Starbucks looking at that for a short time.
Mm-hmm. So maybe, Carrie, we could put, and let me zoom out a little bit, but I do like that idea of putting some sort of more standard commercial in that area.
Maybe it's more like smaller shops that a small business could rent. They don't need a lot of space, but they do want the frontage.
Yeah.
And the pub.
Let's
That
put
might-
some micro retail in there. And I'm sorry, we just I'll be right back, but keep talking here for a sec.
I was going to say, I think that space down there would be perfect for some housing. And then, you know, some of those smaller businesses could go in over by the old Merrimack, you know, mixed use retail housing over there.
Well, the problem that a lot of the potential business owners have been brought up in county meetings and stuff is that we really need to get the council on board with willing to provide the same sort of infrastructure they're willing to provide for large projects like Smith's and the housing on DP Road, because a lot of these smaller business owners, basically they just can't afford all the extra to develop the property to the point where it's actually ready to build a pad and that kind of stuff on with the utility infrastructure.
Yeah. Okay. So what about, and I know Lauren and Rin, any ideas on Deacon Street? Any kind of concepts you want to get embedded in here?
This is Lauren. What I was saying earlier was just more about connectivity, I would say, between the parking lot and Central and Trinity. One of the difficulties I see in our community is that a lot of the retail and restaurants are pretty dispersed, honestly. And I would like to see more thought into developing kind of districts. So we have, you know, a retail restaurant district. Maybe we have an office district. I think that will just bring more activity to those areas for their intended use instead of mixing all of these uses. So yeah, the Deacon Street lot was more about connectivity, maybe leveraging it as an opportunity for placemaking as well. I do know the Los Alamos Schools Credit Union is considering a placemaking opportunity with a potential small stage in that area, which I also think would be a great idea for that area.
Cool, right? Yeah. And when you say like a retail and restaurant district, where do you see that occurring?
Well, you know, right now, the center of our downtown, it seemed like most people agree that it was near Ashley Pond and Main Street, right? Main Street and Central, which is where you enter Central Park Square. So, you know, building up a retail restaurant district along Central, I think makes a lot of sense. And putting office space in another area, but really condensing the retail so that, again, it gives people a reason to come downtown to eat out and to then, you know, visit the other shops that are nearby.
So, and I just to follow up, in the office piece of that, where do you see that being at Central Park Square? I mean, I know there's a lot of office there now, along with some restaurants.
Right. Yeah. I mean, from my perspective, I'd love to bring some of those restaurants to Central and move the offices back into Central Park Square.
Huh. Okay, that's interesting.
I think we should go along with that, with encouraging the council to provide economic development funds for these businesses to kind of shuffle with each other.
All right, great.
Lauren, is the Main Street really central? Or I heard a comment earlier saying that 14th Street was also considered a viable Main Street. Was it 14th or 15th? Will
15.
15th?
Well,
Yeah.
that was the old concept actually was, as David Jolly pointed out, it could actually would go through an alley right through here on Central Park Square. That was the concept from the prior plan. Very radical concept. I don't think it's that feasible, given land ownership and existing buildings right now. That's my sense of it. So I think I do think the Main Street is on Central. I mean, that's really, where the investment has been made, and that's the street with the most character and the best sort of existing assets to make it and to improve upon. So
Yeah,
I
and
think
I like Lauren's suggestion about these districts. I think that's something we can quickly identify on the plan. If there are any others, that we've got the retail restaurant here on Central along the Main Street, which makes sense. And then we talked about some office spaces. I think if we could just identify some locations for residential, that would be good too, since we only have about 5 minutes.
Yeah. Where's all the residential going to go? Where else can we put it besides Merrimack?
This is Lauren again. I actually agreed with Rin where she was saying down by the proposed Marriott. I think that area that could be really great for residential, because you have great views over there too.
It does have amazing views, and it's.
What kind of residential are you looking for? Are you wanting to bring in townhomes or like live work situations, multifamily apartments maybe?
I think townhomes for now, Carrie. I think that's a good, in the interest of time, I think that's a good placeholder.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
We'd want to make sure that in these recommendations for townhomes to go along with changes in code, if any, on the heights of buildings and things, because I know there's a lot of people that purchase those multicolored townhomes that are a little bit further down Trinity on the south side, figuring they're going to have this great view that they had when they purchased it and everything, and then the developer went and built more townhomes further down at higher heights that ended up blocking their views.
Yeah. Well, we will get to that when we get to the code portion of this, Greg. Thank you. I think it's almost 7:30. Any sort of final thoughts? Let's do a quick round robin with all our participants. Paul, you see any strengths?
This has been wonderful. I love this conversation. And because I was hired by the county years ago to deal with the housing crisis, if that's the right word, I feel like the downtown is where we deal with at least a couple of different pieces of that market. So I love this input, and thank you very much.
Great. Any other people here? Oh,
Well, can I interject really quickly?
Yes.
We need to kind of identify what this framework's strengths and weaknesses are. I don't know whether we are there yet or whether we get there after this. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm a little pushy.
You're a taskmaster.
I'll just make one additional comment, kind of supporting what Lauren talked about earlier, but that is that if you, or maybe it was Lisa Joe, about having businesses on the first level and then living space above, we can really multitask our tight downtown here by following that concept.
Paul, if I may ask you, from the standpoint of the general code and our built environment, does that make sense around Central?
Could you say, You're kind of faint, Paul.
I'm sorry. I've had some technical. Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
So I'm trying to anyway. That piece specifically, it seems to me like a Main Street strategy. So that would be our Central Avenue.
right.
Should we be focusing on that?
Focusing on housing on Central Avenue?
On this concept of retail. Are we losing me again?
No, I can hear you.
Darn it.
You're saying retail on the ground floor and then either housing or up above.
I'm just trying to like recapture his thought. I think.
I think that's a I think that's a good idea in any of the downtown corridor there, you know, to do retail, restaurants, that kind of thing down on the main floor. Office space, housing, whatever, you know, on the second story.
Yeah.
In terms of strengths and weaknesses of this plan, I definitely think that identifying districts around Los Alamos that we can strengthen retail, restaurant, office space. I think that's a strength of this approach. And establishing connectivity.
Of course.
I have a different concept of the district. I think our downtown is small enough that one of the districts should be like high density, which would mix the restaurants and the housing and the grocery store. And, you know, so when you say you park once and then you walk to places, that it actually is close enough that you would do that.
Right. Absolutely. And is it that red polygon, that rectangle that we have now around Central between 20th and 15th, or is it somewhere else, that high density core?
This is Lauren. I think that that's right, but you could even extend it a little bit to the east.
I think so too, at least a 10th, if not even further, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah, just go to the beyond the road, north and south, to whatever's facing that area, or the road, Trinity and Central.
Yeah, so you mean all the way to the intersection of Trinity and Central?
Trinity is south, but maybe across the street of Trinity and the things that face on it would be.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Go north-south there. That's interesting.
All right, when I try to drag it, it drags some arrows that I don't want to drag. So I'm going to read.
Okay. All right.
So where am I taking it? All the way to this arrow?
No,
here?
I think
To 15.
Okay.
Great.
Do you want to drag that to Trinity also?
Yeah.
So that you have that corridor between Central and Trinity as high density.
Right. I think that was Lisa Joseph's point.
Yeah.
Like down to Trinity?
Yeah.
Okay,
right there.
I see.
Yeah.
I see.
Well, let me
But
ask
also
Lisa
by
Jo.
Deacon.
Right.
Let me ask this
that one's
question.
good.
I mean, at some point we're going to be dealing with pedestrian issues in zoning from a pedestrian perspective, and that's, you know, Trinity is a driving corridor. So I would say this is fine, but I think just from the standpoint of how to address some of those front spacing businesses may come up, and that's all. But that's good. Thank you.
So do you think maybe a weakness of this plan is that we haven't really developed some of the pedestrian connectivity that would be necessary to support this plan?
Yes, especially across Trinity. There are no lights and you cannot get across.
Yeah.
On like at lunchtime? No.
Yeah. So
I think that's a weakness. It's hard to solve all of the world's problems in half an hour.
Greg. If Greg told us, we wouldn't be able to solve it all today.
Well, if I could just interject, I think the weakest thing, not just with this plan, but with a lot of things, involving tourism and recreation and everything else, is that there needs to come a time. I wrote somewhere, hopefully it will show up in the post, that the talking has to stop and action has to start. And we seem to be, for like at least the last 5 or 6 years, in this constant changing and updating of coming up with plans and ideas and stuff like that. What we really need to do is kind of get the overall specific set goals, not a broad goal like increase business in downtown, but specific goals, and then convince the council to have that put in the charter so that they can't constantly be changing things with ordinances and everything else, because at this point, we just keep snowballing without ever really starting.
And I think there's things are happening on multiple levels, right? There's individual property owners that are figuring out the best things to do with their property. And so we're trying to negotiate at different levels in terms of public policy and private investment in the downtown area. So I see Katrina back on the screen, and I think she's going to tell us it's time to move on.
Yeah. And we did have one weakness on here, but somebody should also discuss the strength before we get into the next area. I mentioned that I thought identifying districts were a strength, but I'm sure there are people who think that there's some strengths that we came up with today. There's got to be some folks who are excited about some of the ideas.
I think having a strong visual landmark at that gateway to downtown is a strength. So the idea of the public arts performing center there at the gateway is a strong strength.
I agree. I think that's a good strength too. Identifying districts and strengthening the main street. I always think that's
who doesn't like
that's
that?
A strength always, right? Right. Support our main street, strengthen that. I think that makes for a good city. So I think that's a good plan. And then the gateway. Anything else? Anybody else? Keith or Lisa or Gerald? I
was going to say something about additional thing about the Merrimack area. A lot of those buildings on the west end buildings.
Yeah.
A lot of those are in pretty rough shape. They're old, and I suspect they have a lot of code issues. And so I would think you would want to consider getting rid of those and replacing those with something, whether it's housing or commercial space or whatever. But in general, looking around downtown, I think if you look closely at a lot of those older buildings, a lot of those should be replaced with something else. So it's just another way to look at improving things, I think, is to pick out some of the more older buildings and look at putting something different there.
Yeah.
We talked about that being high density, so maybe.
So everything up to the Secretary of State was purchased by the developers. So all that row of buildings is included in the Merrimack.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we could put another mixed use, like mirror this footprint on the other side there.
I think that would be a great idea.
Hey folks, can I just interject that the old, I want my residents to know in this town that has not happened yet. The actual transaction on the old Merrimack. Okay.
Okay.
I know that much. I just want you all to know that. Okay.
Carrie, I don't think we need the third one. That third one that's on the left, I take that off.
Okay, sorry about that.
And I would just kind of scooch the two a little closer together so you get a little bit of kind of synergy between them. Yes. Something like that. Maybe a little further away, but yeah.
So I'm gonna call 3 minutes.
Okay,
And so prepare yourself to meet all the other people
all
in 3
right.
minutes.
I think Jennifer's saying scooch it a little further away, right?
Yeah, because I really like the idea, people were talking about that connectivity between Trinity and Central. So I think it's important to have that dashed arrow in between them with
Yeah.
the driving and the pedestrian and the bicycles and
Yeah,
to
so
enhance
scooch
all
that
that.
one to the left a little bit there, Gary. And
Well,
then-
if this Merrimack Center
There we
isn't
go.
a done deal signed contract yet or something, I have to say I'm really against anything that would kick out any of our current small or large businesses, because it just makes it a lot more difficult. I mean, we saw what happened when, you know, Subway closed down their one shop in Central Park and try to open up somewhere else. The same thing with Time Out Pizza. It's not, or Home Run Pizza, whatever it is. It's not easy for the small business owners that are there, or even the larger ones like the auto shop and Beals, to just up and move their business to somewhere else.
I know, and we're not, and you know, just because we put a polygon on a piece of paper, it's not going to just happen. So this is a little bit aspirational, and I know that there are a lot of existing businesses that would be impacted, and so it's not saying that we're going to do this. It's more a direction in which the county and the downtown area can go. So I know that there's a lot of trade-offs.
Hey, Will, just if I could
Sure.
jump in at the last second, just one thought. I was kind of intrigued by the lifestyle center concept that was discussed at the beginning, and I'm just thinking of that Merrimack Center. It sounds like that might be a good fit for that
Okay.
area with the performing arts